While we're waiting for the clicker, just because it's easier, my name is Beth Collins. I'm one of the Master Gardeners here in Lyon County. For those of you that don't know, Master Gardeners are volunteers. We're volunteers with the University of Minnesota Extension Service. We work here in the counties. We're here and available to answer your questions about trees, lawns, gardens, insects, diseases, whatever. And if we can't find the answer between all of us Master Gardeners, we know who to go to ask for assistance. And we just push
Arrow to go.
this one.
Yep.
Okay. So what I want to talk about tonight is, it's entitled Out with the Ash and In with the New. You know that we've got emerald ash borer in the city. It's going to cause a lot of problems. So what do you do if you have an ash tree and you want to replace it? Oh. Okay, I'm having trouble, so we'll just go with this one. So what I want to do is talk about is, do you have an ash tree? If you don't have an ash tree, you don't have to worry about emerald ash borer. We'll take a brief look at the ash borer and its life cycle. Some things you need to do, like look up, look down, look around. I have a list of suggested trees and shrubs. They're on one of the handouts. And I have some resources for you to look at. So do you have an ash tree? If you don't have an ash tree, you don't need to worry about emerald ash borer. So the way you identify an ash tree is you look at the leaves, the branching, and the bark. So ash leaves are what they call a compound leaf. So you have, whoops, where I went? There's your stem of the tree, and this is your whole leaf. So you have a little leaflet. And you have between 5 to 11 leaflets on the tree. They have opposite branching. This is your opposite branching versus alternate. If you can't remember, think of your shoulders. Your shoulders are opposite each other. And it has very blunt branch tips. So if you look at them in the winter, it looks almost like the end of a new pencil. They're just very blunt. Because it's a compound leaf, you don't have all the fine branches. Now I said opposite branching, or compound leaves. We'll talk about that. There are a lot of trees that have compound leaves. How do you tell them apart? Well, there's a real handy way. Remember I said ash have opposite branching? The only other tree that has opposite branching is the maple. So out of all of these trees, and we do have black walnut, locust, some hickory, but white ash, box elder. Box elder is a maple tree, for those of you that didn't know. And the way you can tell the difference between them is box elder only gets 3 to 5 leaflets, and they all look different. They don't look the same versus an ash tree, which is, as I said, 5 to 11 leaflets, and they all look the same. I don't think most people have a box elder in their yard just because it's not that great of a tree, but you do see them. You're more likely to have an ash tree. The bark is very dark gray brown. It's furrowed. It looks like a lot of other trees, but when you use them in combination, you can kind of tell that, okay, that's my ash tree. The other tree that's very common in yards is silver maple, and that has a very smoother bark. It has a real silvery cast to it. So what's an emerald ash borer look like? So there it is. It's this small metallic green insect. It's only about 1 inch long, and it's only about 1/2 inch wide. So, and it lives in the top of the tree, in the canopy of the tree, so it's very hard to see. The one thing you can, if you do see them and the wings are open, it does have a real red abdomen, which makes it very easy to see, to identify. You need to remember that size in a little bit. So, life cycle. They're hatching about this time of year. One female can lay between 40 to 70 eggs. And there are reports, some people suggest that they can lay even more. The eggs hatch, burrow into the bark, under the bark, and they start eating. Come winter, they will pupate under the bark and wait until spring. If we have a cold winter, i.e. below 0 degrees for a week or two, it may kill some of them. That did not happen this year in the entire state, unfortunately, which probably means we're going to have a high hatch this year. As I said, they feed in the upper canopy of the tree and work their way down. So if you're looking for a little green bug that's 1 inch long in amongst all these green leaves up there in the tree, good luck. So how do you tell if your tree is infected? I mean, it's not wearing a big sign. So when you read all of the information, the things they tell you are, look for D-shaped holes. Remember I said that insect is 1/2 inch wide? It makes a hole 1/2 inch wide. Look for S-shaped galleries under the bark. That means you got to peel the bark off, which is not real helpful for the tree. And you look for an increase in bark flaking from woodpecker activity. May or may not be something you notice. If it's in the upper part of the tree, it's not flaking off really big pieces of bark. All the pictures they show when they show this are at the base of the tree, and it's all these big pieces of bark coming off. That's not happening up in the top of the tree where the insects first start. So there's got to be a way, and there is. It's called a reduction in canopy. It's a gradual reduction in the canopy of the tree that tells you it's infected. So just so you know, there's a D-shaped hole. There's somebody's finger. I don't know why they tell you look for a D-shaped hole. I went out to look at my ash tree with my binoculars, and I have very good binoculars because I'm a bird watcher. And I'm looking at that tree going, okay, I can see that side of the branch, but I can't, which branch was I looking at? You can't see them. They're really hard to see. So if you start seeing this kind of bark, these kind of holes down at the bottom of your tree at eye level, your tree's dead. Sorry, there's not much you can do. So when I talk about gradual thinning of the crown, you're looking for less leaves. This tree is about 50% impacted by the borer, but it's been a very gradual. You don't lose all the leaves at once. They don't all change color. The best thing I can suggest you to do is this year when the tree is fully leafed out, the end of May, the first part of June, go out and take some pictures of it. Next year, when the tree is fully leafed out, take that picture and go out and look at it again. And stand there and go, well, that branch is a little bit less than the other one than it was this year. That's the best way to tell if you're getting a gradual decline, is to take a picture this year and compare it with what you see next year. It can take up to 3 years for you to recognize that that tree has got an infestation because it's a gradual decline. What happens is the insect is burrowing around in the trees, so they're cutting off part of the nutrient flow, which is why you get that gradual decline. It's not an instant decline. The other thing you might notice is epicormic branching. You go out and you look at your tree and all of a sudden there's lots of branches down at the bottom of the trunk. The tree has a mechanism that prevents those buds from growing until there's that chemical is not produced, and then the tree says, oh, I need to produce leaves and branches, so I'm going to start sprouting at the base of the trunk. The other indication is an increase in seed production. Trees when they're under stress, such as an insect infestation or the drought we had last year, the next year, the following year, they tend to produce a lot of seeds. This year, that may not be a really good indication because we had a drought last year and the trees are going, ooh, we had a drought, we better make some more seeds. It's that gradual thinning of the crown, some epicormic branching. Just so you get an idea, this is about 50% tree canopy impacted. This one, about the same. So what do you do? In Marshall, it is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when your tree is going to get impacted. The bugs are here. Emerald ash borer can move about 1/2 mile a year, which means that if this tree here is where it was first impacted, we first had the infestation occur, we don't see it for 3 years. That means the bug has 3 years to move. And each year it's going to move a little bit farther. So it's, like I said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. If you have ash trees, we're going to get the emerald ash borer. It's been coming up from the east. It's been in the state for a while. My sister lives in Duluth. They've had, their trees have been impacted for the last 4 years. And she has a lot of them. She's treating some, not all of them. So what do you do? Okay, there's two options. Well, all right, there's really three, but the third one is not a really good option, but we'll talk about it. You can keep the tree if it is a valuable shade tree. And by that I mean it's the only tree shading your house or one of the few trees shading your house. In my yard, the ash trees are the ones that are shading the west side of my house. I don't want to lose them. My air conditioning bill would go through the roof, literally. I'm going to treat my trees. If less than 30% of the crown is infected, treat it. You will need to treat that tree every 1 to 2 years, depending on the treatment method you choose. So you are in it for the long haul. That's a consideration you have to make. Remove it if the crown is more than 50% infected. Yes, you could try treating it. It may or may not survive. If it does survive, it's not going to be in really good shape because you've got all these dead branches in there. You might as well just get rid of it and plant something new. You have the option, of course, to not remove it. I do not recommend that. It will become a hazard tree. You really don't want dead trees in your backyard, falling on your house, your neighbor's house, dropping branches all over the place. The only time I would say that's an option is if you have these trees in a windbreak, shelter belt, or woodlot. You don't need to worry about removing those. At some point you may need to, but that's up to you. It's not an urgent thing. You're probably not going to treat all those trees just due to cost. That's the only time I would say don't remove the trees. So you have treatment options. One of the handouts I gave you, the blue one, emerald ash borer, it does talk about the different treatment options. On there it'll say 10 to 15 inches you can do a ground application or a soil drench. A 15-inch tree, trying to get enough coverage on the ground to make sure your roots are getting it into the tree to prevent the insect. I'm not sure I'd want to trust my application skills. I would say at about 10 to 12 inches, start going with the injection method. If you're doing a soil application or what they call a soil drench, you need to do that every year. In that handout on the emerald ash borer, the blue one, there is a list of all the various chemicals that you can use to do a soil drench. I do not know how much they cost. I've not tried to find them or anything else. If your tree is over about 12 inches in diameter, you need to inject it at the base of the tree. This has to be done by a licensed pesticide applicator. These companies are licensed by the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and I will show you at the end where you can find a list of licensed applicators. There are several around. If you are planning to do this, you need to get on their books right away if you want to do it this year. I talked to a gentleman at the home show in March, and the earliest he could get me in is June. So if you want to get your trees treated, contact your applicator as soon as possible because it might take a while to get you there. And this will cost you between $8 to $10 a diameter inch. So it does add up. So you say, well, what's a diameter? Well, speaking as the forester, diameter is measured 4.5 feet above the ground. And the easiest way for you guys to do is take a yardstick, hold it up to the tree at about eye level, line up 0 on one side, and then you read the other side. And you can say, oh, it's about 20 inches. You don't have to be exact. You're just getting an idea. So a 20-inch diameter tree will cost you in injections about $200 a year, which is cheap compared to removing the tree. That determines if you can use the ground soil drench or what the cost of the injection is. The other way you can do it is you take a tape measure and you measure the circumference of the tree and you divide it by 3.14. Just hold a ruler, you get a good estimate. If you know a forester like me, you can ask to borrow my diameter tape, but I'd have to find it first. I do know where it is. But before you do anything, so you've decided I'm going to remove this tree. You need to look and see what other things are around. So you need to look up, you need to look down, you need to look around. Look up. Where are your utility lines? If you look up and you're seeing utility lines over your head, and you put a 50-foot tree in there, and those utility lines are at about 20, 25 feet, utility companies do not prune for aesthetic, they prune for safety. They just come in and cut them. You really don't want to put that tall of a tree under your utility lines because it's just not going to be safe. Look down. Where are your buried utility lines? If you don't know, you really don't want to be digging in there with a metal shovel to plant a tree and you hit a power line. You need to know where your buried utility lines are. And that includes water, sewer, and gas lines. Mostly you don't need to worry about those if you're just digging it by hand, but if you're moving in a tree with a tree spade, they're moving in 5 to 6 foot circles of ground and about 5 to 6 or deeper in depth. You really don't want to hit your water line or your sewer line or your gas line. We'll talk about how you find those out in a minute here. Look around. How close are you to your house, your neighbor's house, a fence, garages, gardens, sidewalks, driveways, streets? Again, when you say, okay, I'm going to put the tree here, your house is 5 feet over here, and you want to put in a 40-foot tree, you're going to have problems. You need to be aware of that. So on the list of recommended species, it gives you the height and the width so you can kind of plan for that. Same thing with fences and garages. If you have a vegetable garden, most of those need full sun. If you want to keep that, you don't want to plant a tall tree on the west side of it, unless you want to get rid of your garden. That's up to you. Sidewalks, driveways, and streets. If you plant it close to a sidewalk or a driveway, as the tree grows, it can pull up your concrete or tar and cause a real problem. So to prevent future problems, be aware of these things before you start digging and planting a tree. And there are some trees you don't want to plant. And everybody looks at that and says, silver maple, that's a really nice tree. It is. I have several of them in my front yard. The problem is that we have a lot of silver maple, like we have a lot of ash. We had a lot of American elm, and we lost them all because of disease. One of the goals here is not to be planting the exact same tree species all over the city, so that if an insect or disease problem does occur with maples, every tree is not a maple. So look for something else, if at all possible. The other thing you need to be aware of is there are invasive tree species as determined by the Department of Agriculture and the DNR. You should not be able to find these at a tree nursery, at a reputable tree nursery. Also, this also means that if you're complaining to your friend that you've got to take down this tree and it's going to cost you so much money and a new tree is going to cost even more, and they say, oh, don't bother, I've got this Norway maple for you. Just come and dig it up. Norway maple is an invasive species. It is not to be moved, and you should do everything you can to remove it, eradicate it. Don't put invasive species in. Don't move them around. So there are a bunch of trees to consider. This is not a complete list in any way, shape, or form. These may or may not be available at all tree nurseries. If the tree on the tree list I gave you is not available, hopefully they can get you something similar. That's why I gave you all the information I did. And I don't even know, did I give you the scientific name on those?
For hackberry, it has scientific name.
Yeah, yep, it does. Okay, I was panicking on my way in today, and it's like, did I do that? And I don't have a chance to look at it, so it's in there. So, okay. So these are some trees that are really good, or could be really good in your yard. Hackberry, Saltus occidentalis, It does well in an urban environment. It tolerates most soils except swamps, and hopefully none of you are living in swamps. It has a very gold color in the foliage in the fall. It has little berries. The birds love them. If you like birds, you like hackberries. It gets to 60 feet tall. It can spread up to 60 feet wide, and it needs full sun. But it's a gorgeous tree. There are elms. You need to make sure you're looking for a Dutch elm resistant species, variety. Resistance does not mean it won't get Dutch elm, but it is less likely to get that. Some of the varieties that I've seen are Princeton, Prairie Expedition, Discovery. There's a whole host of various varieties of disease-resistant elm trees that you can plant. When you're planting elm trees, they should be at least 60 feet apart so that their roots don't graft and cause the disease to move from tree to tree, and never plant more than 5% of the total tree population in elm. That's what killed us. That's what did us in the cities in the 60s when it went down the blocks one after another. They were too close together and too many of them. There are some hybrid Asian elms that are shorter. They don't get to the 60, 80 feet tall that other elms get. I did not find any names for those, but I do know that they grow well on a tough site. And a tough site would be a relatively new home development, and you have no idea what they put in for soil, but it's been compacted by tractors and all this stuff. Stuff is really hard to grow. That's what they're talking about. Northern pin oak, Quercus ellipsoidalis. The one variety I saw was Balski's. The neat thing about these is they have a red leaf in the spring, in the fall, and they have dark green in the summer. They're a symmetrical form, so they're kind of uniform shaped. They're not one branch here, one branch here, one branch here kind of thing. They can get to 60 feet tall, about 45 feet wide, and again, they like full sun. Weeping willow, Salix alba. It's very fast growing. If you need a fast growing shade tree, this is a really good one. Light green leaves in the summer, yellow leaves in the fall. One of its drawbacks in my mind is that they rain down branches all year round. And we had a tree, one of these when I was in the yard I grew up in, and we would dump all the rakings of the leaves behind the garage. They all sprouted. So be aware of that if you have one. But they are a really nice tree. It is a fast growing tree, about 50 feet wide, 50 feet high. White fir, it's also known as concolor fir or Abies concolor. It looks, in the picture, looks a lot like Colorado blue spruce, but it is resistant to the needle cast disease that Colorado blue spruce gets. So if you don't want your tree losing all of its needles after about 20 years, don't get Colorado blue, get white fir. It's a gorgeous shaped tree, about 50 feet high, 20 feet wide, and again, it needs full sun. Tamarack, or larch, Larix larciana. This is one of my favorite trees. If you go up north in the fall and you drive by a marsh or a swamp, and there's this tree with all these golden needles on it, that's tamarack. It loses its needles in the fall. In the spring, when they come back, they're this brilliant green. That's just such a fun color to see first thing in the spring. They wind up growing in the swamps because they can't compete against all the forest trees in the northern part of the state, but if you plant one in your yard and take care of it, it will grow very fine. One of the nice things about these is they are tolerant of de-icing salt spray. So if you're near a road and you get a lot of spray and you want to plant a tree between you and the road, tamarack will be a good tree for it because it will tolerate some of that salt spray. About 60 feet tall and 30 feet wide. Bur oak, Quercus macrocarpa. Bur oak is another one of my favorite trees. It does have dense shade. It's big, 70 to 80 feet tall and wide, tolerates a wide range of soils. It's a gorgeous tree. The macrocarpa means big cap. It's because you can't barely see the acorn for the cover of the acorn. It can produce a lot of acorns, so that can be a drawback. If you want to see some of these in full form, go out to Bronner Lake, part of Camden Park, And in the picnic area, the tree right by the parking pad is a bur oak. I love them. They're fun trees. Birds love them. You can tell I'm a birder. Serviceberry. This can be, I say a species because there's all kinds of varieties of serviceberry. You need to look at them. It can be a large shrub. It can be a single or multi-stem small tree. You can get fruit off of it and eat them fresh or make them into jams, jellies, pies. Excuse me. It can be full sun to shade, depending on the species or cultivar that you get, the variety. The Regent cultivar is a shrub that's designed for fruit production. White flowers in the spring, reddish leaves in the fall, 40 to 25 feet, 40 to 15 feet. And again, that depends on the variety that you get. And there's a lot of them. Northern catalpa. This is another fun tree. It has heart-shaped leaves. And these flowers, they look almost like orchids. They're very fragrant. It does have long seed pods, which you can see right there. Doesn't bother me, they're kind of fun. Tolerates a wide variety of soil, so it does well in an urban environment. 60 feet high, 40 feet wide, needs full sun. Most trees need full sun. Honey locust. Make sure you're getting a thornless variety because typically the native ones have very long thorns in them. The one that was recommended is Northern Acclaim, Gladystia triacanthus variety Inermes Harvey. If you find one at the nursery, I'm pretty sure it's going to be thornless. The nice thing about them is they have filtered shade. Because they have very fine leaflets, you don't get the shade blocking. So if you want the lawn underneath your tree, get something like this because the filtered shade will allow that to occur. Kentucky coffee tree, Gymnocladus dioica. The variety is University of Minnesota Synergy. This is a male tree, so it doesn't have the pods that you get with a female Kentucky coffee tree. If you don't mind the pods, get the female one. It doesn't really matter. This one also tolerates heat, cold, wind, and very dry soils, which we have a lot of around here. It also is very good tolerance for both de-icing salt spray and runoff. So if you're near an area where you get a lot of salt runoff, parking lots, places like that, this would be a good candidate, or near a road that you're getting the spray. 50 to 60 feet tall, 25 to 30 feet wide, needs full sun. Some shrubs, mock orange. Miniature snowflake is one of the varieties. Again, it has a lot of varieties. These have showy, fragrant white flowers. They bloom on old wood. So what that means is if you trim off all the old wood, if you trim a lot of the old wood off, you're not going to get as many blossoms. So you have to be kind of careful when you're starting to prune them. About 4 feet high, 3 feet wide. This is nice because it will tolerate full and part sun to part sun. So it's not just, you can put it in the shade. Spirea, again, many varieties of this shrub. White or pink flowers, late spring to summer. Has a wide range of leaf color, which is kind of nice. And again, it only gets about 3 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet wide. And again, it will tolerate full to part sun. So you don't have to have it out in the middle. Potentilla, which is a fun one. This is a nice compact shrub. You can get it with yellow or white flowers. Gets about 4 feet, full to part sun. So if you've got an area you're trying to fill in, some of these shrubs are really good for it. Hydrangea, there are a lot more varieties than there ever were before with these. You get white to red flowers, 7 feet tall, 8 feet wide. Your best bet is to go to the nursery and see what they have for varieties there and any special requirements for growing them. Red twig dogwood or red osier dogwood, these are fun shrubs. They're really red, the stems are red. So in the spring, when you're driving around, there's this brilliant red because they get really red in the spring. They're red all year, but they get even redder in the spring. There's also a variety of yellow twig dogwood or yellow osier dogwood, and instead of red, they're yellow. And again, it's just this bright color first thing in the year. About 10 feet by 10 feet. So this, as I said, this is not an all-encompassing list. We'll show you where you can get some more information and look at some other trees and things that you can look at. When you go to buy them, read the label. This one I happened to take at Greenwood Nursery, this one I took at Redwood Falls Nursery, but they both tell you the name, the species, the variety. This is a Princeton elm. How big is it? Information on the growing, how to plant, and the cost. I don't remember what this one cost. It's on the other side of the label, and I didn't take that picture. But just to point out, if you want a 2-year warranty, at least at Greenwood, this tree would cost you $215. If they plant it, plus that 2-year guarantee, it's going to be almost $300. They don't include the delivery charge on those prices. It is not a cheap proposition. And people say, oh, that's too expensive. I don't want to spend that kind of money. Well, as a homeowner, you may not realize it, but that tree adds an amount that you don't even recognize to the value of your house. When I studied forestry, and I grant you this was many years ago, but I think it still holds, they took 2 trees, 2 houses, one with trees, one without. The one with the trees had an appraised value of over $10,000 more than the one without. You really do want to keep the trees. So when you go to planting, these typically come in about a 5-gallon plastic container. You want to dig that hole about 1.5 times bigger than that container, width and depth, so that you can add compost, loosen soil, all kinds of things. You need to remove the container. Yes, that seems obvious, but not to everybody. I'm serious. Why isn't my tree growing? Well, you didn't take it out of the ball and burlap part of it, so it does happen. But with the plastic containers, lay the tree very carefully down near the hole so that the roots are right close to the hole that you've dug. Take like a box cutter or a knife, cut that plastic off and gently roll it into the hole. Don't grab it by the stem and yank it out of the thing, because you're not going to do the tree any good. Backfill the hole with dirt or compost. Make sure you're packing it down so you don't have a lot of air holes, air pockets. Water it really well when you plant it. When I've planted trees, I literally just put the hose on it, a little full, and just run it. And then I stomp it down, make sure, because what you want to do is keep the level of the tree where it is in the container with the level of the ground. You don't want it higher or lower. And so you might have to fill in some of the sides and things to keep it upright. You need to water it well, continuously, especially the first couple years. So if there isn't a lot of rain like last year, you're going to be watering it every week because you need about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of water. If we keep the rain that we've had this spring, we won't have to water them at all. But what you do is take your hose, take it up, put it on the base of the tree, and just barely turn it on and let it run for an hour or 2. Then, if you don't get any more rain, do it the same thing next week. Add mulch around the tree. That helps prevent the loss of the moisture. It also prevents you from hitting the tree when you're mowing or weed whacking, because there should be no grass growing there, and you really don't want to hit the tree. If the tree is big enough, i.e. it is in one of those 5-foot, 6-foot big ball things, you want to use a Vermeer tree spade. There are companies that will do that. I know somebody who is getting one done, and it's going to cost about $2,000. The difference is you get almost an immediate shade tree because they're going to be moving a tree that's about this big around, not one that's this big around. So you get a much bigger tree. But you still have to take care of it, water it, all those good things. So what I want to do, let's see if this will work here. No, okay, so let me do this, and we'll come here. Don't do this to me. And it's going to do this to me. All right, so let's go back to here. Come on. Well, you silly thing. All right, so we'll just punt. Fox Fireworks. So if you come into the University of Minnesota Extension site and you search for trees, trees for Minnesota. This will give you some different trees. It'll talk about planting, and this is, I want the other one. So what it does is it gives you a picture, it gives you the name, the variety, gives you some information about it, tells you what it requires. So in this case, the river birch, whoops, you can't see it, can you? Let me go back to, no, I just need to close this. And get rid of that, and we should be, let's see, this is not helpful because I might need to go get Paula. Would you do that for me, Darwin? Thank you. I really do need to show you a couple sites specific to doing things with trees. And if I can't get them from here, joys of technology. And now I lost this one too, that's helpful. Share screen, what one is this, F4? Nope. Sorry about this. There we go. Nope, not quite. Okay, thank you, Paula. I just walked in. No, she's got great talent that way. Thank you, Dar. Okay, so this is the University of Minnesota website. I'll give you the address is on your handout. So it gives you the tree information, talks about different things. River birch, it says it's tolerant of wet and poorly drained soils. Doesn't mean it requires it, it tolerates it. So if you have a wetter area that you want to put a tree in, this would do. Okay, so just because it says wet and tolerant of wet doesn't mean it requires it. So this has a different variety of trees and information on them. One of the trees that's in here that people don't think about is hickory. There's a lot of, because if you follow anything on gardening, you know that southern Minnesota has suddenly switched this year from zone 4 to zone 5 because of warming climate. So we can now tolerate warmer trees that grow in warmer climates. So if you look to what they suggest in Iowa, those might be valuable up here. They may not have gotten everything updated on these sites. So if you go in, there's a forest resource page, which is really kind of nice because it gives you all kinds of trees, shrubs, conifers. So if you go in here, and what this does, scroll down and find my elm, American elm. It gives you all the information about the size, hardiness zones, characteristics where it grows. But the best part is, is it gives you the information on varieties. So if there are varieties for that tree that do better in this area or that you're looking for, this will give you that information. So these are some that have been suggested by the extension. So this is a really nice part to have. So now let me go back to here. Whoops. And I want to search for, what am I searching for? DNR trees. On the DNR website, DNR site, they give you a list of all the native trees to Minnesota. So you can go in here and look and see what kinds of things, similar kinds of things that the website has, but these are all the native trees. So if you look at box elder, gives you a picture of the leaf, talks about how it's shaped, how it grows, where it grows, what its seed is, and what the wood uses are. It's not talking about its benefit or its availability or use as a shade tree. It just gives you the information of a native tree of Minnesota, which is very handy. Go for state one call. So if you're going to be planting a tree, oops, and you're not sure where your lines are, this website is also on your handout because I knew it was going to be important. You go to Gopher State One Call and you click homeowners. And this says, gives you information, submit a ticket. We'll see if this comes up. What it says is you have to identify that you are doing the excavation yourself. You are not doing it as a request for an excavator, contractor, landscaper, or other professional. You are not doing horizontal boring or explosions. Please don't blow up your yard. And once you agree, you certify to all the above, and you put your email address in here, within 5 minutes you will get an email, and it will say, click this link, and it will give you a form to fill out. And what that's going to require is your name, your address, where in the yard you want to plant the tree, and when you want to do it. They require at least 48 hours notice before you dig, so that they can come out and do your lawn, mark your trees. What you need to do is put a white flag in your yard where you're going to be digging the tree, where you're going to plant the tree. So that could be a stick you painted white, a white handkerchief, a white X on the ground, something to indicate this is where you want to dig. And what they do is they send a crew out, and if it's just doing the electric, phone, cable, those kinds of things, it's done for free. And they will come out, but you need to give them a minimum of 48 hours notice. So if you want to plant the tree at noon on Friday, you have to make sure this request is in by noon on Wednesday. Personally, I would give them extra time. If I'm planting on Saturday, I will submit my ticket Monday morning. They will come out and they will flag. They will put orange, red, and green flags to designate the different utilities that are there. If you are looking for water and sewer, you need to talk to your city because they do not mark those. If you're looking for your gas line, if you have gas, you might need to talk to the gas company. If you have buried line for electric, cable, phone to your garage that you've done, that are not connected, so it's run into your house, and then you've run a line out to your garage separate from your house, they do not check for that either. It's only the ones from the street access or the alley access to your house that they will check. So if you have other lines, you have to get those paid for. You get to do those. And the last one is MDA licensing. Pesticide. Licenses. You need to search the licenses. Oops, wrong one. License lookup. You need to search for the license that you need. And in our case, for some reason, it is under pesticide applicator manure license. I have no idea why they put manure and pesticide together, but okay. You need to pick your county. You could search for all of them. You don't, it's really a mess. If you want to search for more than one county, hold the control key down and select it. You need to select what type. This is all on that handout because I knew we were going to have questions about this. So we want, whoops, too far. Natural areas, commercial pesticide applicator, natural areas, forestry, rights of way. Hold my control key down. I want soil fumigation. And then I want non-commercial, forest and soil. And I want to pick create. Search it. There you go. That's what you get. Those are licensed applicators. And I will tell you, every time I do this, I get a different list. I did this at home earlier today, and there were a lot more, and I used the exact same requirements, the questions I had here. So it also tells you that the City of Ballatin, City of Minneota, Minnesota Department of Transportation, those aren't going to do tree injections. This is a pesticide application. So those are folks that are going to be producing or applying pesticides. So you may have to really read this, and I know it's kind of hard to read, and see if they do injections. That's the only way you can do it. And I know there is a person who does injections who's not listed on this one, even though he was on the one I did earlier today. So I don't quite understand when I do the exact same thing, I get different answers.
So Beth,
Yes.
this is how you're finding people who do the treatment for the
Yes.
report.
This is doing the injection part of it. They might do the soil application as well, so you don't have to do it. I'm not sure I would trust myself to apply the stuff on the soil enough to make sure I got it right. But the City of Ballatin and the City of Minneota, the Department of Transportation is not going to be the people who do this. But this is, and I know there are people in Redwood County. I didn't search for Redwood County. There might be people in other counties that you can get a hold of and see if they will come in and do it. But this is where you find that information. Question?
Called the city and they told me the places in town.
That could be, okay, yeah. So you could try that. I just know this is the official list. These are people that are licensed. Hopefully they're all licensed, but if you ask around, you can find people as well. Yes, sir?
Can we do injections ourselves?
No. This is, by MDA, you're supposed to have that done by a licensed applicator. So there you go. There's a lot of trees you can plant. Yes?
Let me ask a couple.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I have two questions.
Sure.
One is, can we cut down at our home our emerald, our ash trees that we're
Mhm.
planted. So we have 53 of them on our lake.
Right.
Can we cut them down May, June, and July, or do you have to cut them down
If
in months that have an R in it?
no, you can cut. If you're harvesting the tree, you can cut them down now. The issue,
You don't have to worry about them.
the issue is, are you transporting the logs anywhere?
No.
If you're just cutting them down and burning them in your yard, you're fine. It's only when you take the logs and you transport them outside of a quarantine area. So if you took the ash trees down here in Marshall and you moved them to an area that doesn't have emerald ash borer, that would be a violation.
And you can cut them down any time of the year.
Yes. If you're just taking them down, it doesn't really matter. It's, if you're pruning a tree, you don't want to prune it now because that's another way that the insects can get in. So you would wait and prune it in the non-growing season, November, December, January, February. Other questions? Yes.
They always say dig the hole, round hole,
Mm-hmm.
1.5 times
Yeah.
bigger. I was reading somewhere where they recommend a square hole to prevent the roots from circling.
Well, that's why you make it a little bit bigger, and you fill it in with compost and fresh dirt, so that they don't hit that wall where you dug them, or you disturb the side of the hole. I have enough trouble digging a round hole. I'm not even going to try and dig a square hole. But that's what you do for those. So if you're concerned because you have a very high clay soil content in your soil, and you dig the hole and it just sits there, it's probably high clay. Scruff up the edges so it's not a smooth surface. The trees will get through there. It may take them a while. But if you've also put some fresh dirt, compost, topsoil, and put it in there and packed it down, it should be fine. Yes?
Should you rough up the roots of the root ball?
Only, well, when you take them out, when you get it uncovered, if they are circling the inside of the container, then I would cut them in a couple places to straighten them out so that they're not just continuing to circle. So you may have to look at that. I did not even touch on fruit trees because there are so many different varieties and things. Those usually come in what I would call a tube, so they don't need quite as big a hole. But you want to make sure there that you spread the roots out over a pile of dirt in the bottom of the hole so that they start growing outward. There's a lot of options. So if you go to the nursery and you say, oh, I'm looking for this tree, whichever one is on there, and they say, oh, we don't have that. We have this one that's very similar. That's okay, because there are so many varieties. I don't keep up with them. It's hard to keep up with them. So you can kind of mix and match. This is just to give you some ideas of thinking and looking. I looked at Runnings, Menards, Green Tree, and Redwood Falls. They have a variety of trees. If you go to Greenwood or Redwood Falls Nursery, they tend to be bigger than the ones at Runnings, Menards, and Walmart. But those would be fine trees as well. The issue becomes if you're moving a 10-foot tree and your car is only 8 foot long, you have an issue with transporting. I also didn't talk about things like lilacs. That's a very good tree. Yes?
This might be a silly question.
There is no such thing.
So if you're wanting to find out if your tree is infected and you don't have high power binoculars, you don't want to wait years, the people who do the pesticides, are they able to identify?
Yes, what you would do then is call an arborist or a tree professional and say, can you just come and see if my tree is infected? Because what they have to do is get up in the top of the tree and see. What they would do is look at the branches and say, oh, is it declining? Do we see any of this? But they really need to get up, if it's not a major infestation on the tree, they really need to get up in the canopy, and you can tell them that's what you need. I don't have any clue what that would cost, but I'm sure that they would do it. Yes?
My dad's ash trees, they're dying on the top.
Uh-huh,
They have them lopped off.
uh-huh.
New sprouts coming up. They look really good now.
They could. It may not have been ash borer.
Oh, okay.
There could be other things that get into the ash trees. So that's where you just need to look at a variety of things and say, is this the issue? And it is, and I cannot stress enough that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that it's going to get infected. Yes?
So, what are your thoughts on 10 years from now? People have either treated their trees or eliminated their trees. And the ash borer, in theory, wouldn't have any more trees to eat. Does it disappear?
No.
You don't have to keep treating your trees for 50 years. You only have to treat them for
No, you will always have to treat the trees because you will never get rid of the ash. There are ash all along the highways, railroad right-of-ways, down along creeks, rivers, state parks, any woodlots, things like that. There's always going to be ash trees. There's always elm trees that are growing, but they always get Dutch elm disease after about 20 years. So it's never going to be totally eradicated. It's always going to be here. It's just we notice it now because there's so many ash trees that it's impacting. It's probably always been around. We just haven't noticed it because it didn't make a big impact in the woods. Any other questions? Yeah.
I was looking at the sites when you had up, the DNR sites.
Mhm.
I didn't notice anywhere where it would say this is a fast-growing tree. How do we know what trees are more fast-growing trees?
When you go and look at the nursery, it should tell you if it's a fast-growing tree. Some of the fast-growing trees that I know of are willows, aspen, cottonwood, some of the maples. Silver maple is a fast-growing tree, but it's one that we have a lot of. Drawing a blank now, there are some other ones. Aspens, poplars. But if you go to the nursery and you're looking at it, it should say on the label that it's a fast-growing or non-fast-growing. The DNR website may not tell you if it's a fast-growing because that's just looking at the tree itself. The Extension Service one might tell you if it's fast-growing or not. You might have to do some looking because it's kind of buried sometimes. Yes?
So do sometimes the fast-growing ones also die fast?
Yes. So a fast-growing tree, aspen, for instance, that's a very fast-growing tree. By 80 years, it's pretty much on its last legs, which may not be long for us. It seems long for us. I mean, it's not long in the life of a tree because some of those trees last 300 years. So it depends on how you define fast. But aspen is a fast-growing tree, but it doesn't, by 40 years old, 50 years old, it starts to lose branches and cause problems and things. So it's not a great tree for your yard, long-term anyway. On the back table, sorry I was late, but there are some other handouts. There's some seeds. We have a plant sale coming up June 7th, June 7th over at the Y. So these will be plants that we have either, Master Gardeners have grown and are selling, or we've gotten donated from nurseries. So please feel free to come by and find some plants. There won't be any trees, I'm pretty sure, unless I get the black walnut dug out of my garden and potted and growing again. I won't guarantee that one, so probably not trees, but there are some seeds there. I'm not sure. You just throw it all in the box, Sue. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So is there any benefit in doing an injection prior to seeing any loss?
I am. My trees, I do not see any indication of them. I know it's coming. Part of the reason I'm going to do the one tree is that my neighbors took out a garage, and my tree had a lot of damage due to sun scald, even though it's a 40-inch diameter tree. I'm going to be proactive and treat that tree just because it's under stress already. I don't want to lose it. It's going to cost me probably about $5,000 to get it out of there because of where it's located in my lot versus my neighbors. And they're going to have to take it down literally small branch by small branch because here's my house, here's my neighbor's house, here's his fence, here's the power line. So I'm going to be proactive. Until you really see that decline in the canopy, you really don't need to treat the tree. But if you're in Marshall, I would say just go ahead and treat it because you may not know it's there yet. And waiting, the longer you wait, the worse, the harder it can be. So, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
If you remove the tree,
Mm-hmm.
can you put the new tree in the same location?
If you get all of the roots removed, and that means you get somebody in to grind out that stump, grind out the roots, maybe. I would move it a little bit farther away just because you've got all the root in there to decompose and cause issues. I'd try and move it a little bit away from this exact
3 or 4
feet. Yeah. Not across the yard, but just that same hole might be a little bit difficult to plant in, that same spot.
Okay.
If not, thank you all for coming. Hope you have a good evening, and I haven't scared you too much, and good luck keeping your trees.